Hello, my miraculous friend. This is Reverend Frances Fayden, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. I'm so grateful to be with you today and sharing today's very special topic of do you deserve a miracle? We're going to be talking all about that today. But before we do that, let's get ourselves grounded and centered on the call, really allowing yourself to relax, take a moment, unplug from any distractions, and let yourself really receive today's message. So just take a few deep breaths with me, and as you're focusing on your breathing, giving yourself complete permission to let go of whatever happened before you started to listen, whatever might be happening later. And of course, as always, if you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, but you can still focus on your breathing. And as your breathing becomes more calm, your mind also begins to settle in. Whatever it is that you need to hear today is going to be exactly what comes through just for you. So knowing that, let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude. And we can begin. Well, my friend, do you deserve a miracle? Isn't that an interesting question to ask? And you would be surprised to know how often I hear that from my own clients. When I very first started working with Mother Mary directly, she first came to me in 2012, but before then, leading up to that time for probably about 2 or 3 years, I would see her energy in people's energy fields. And so I was doing intuitive healing at the time, working with chakras. I still do this work with chakras, but I wasn't specifically working with Mother Mary. And I would just, intuitively be dialoguing with people's energy centers, and Mother Mary would appear and she would be in their energy field. And I would always ask them, I'd say, oh, Mother Mary's here. Do you have a special connection with her? And most of the time that they would say, yes, I've been praying to her for a long time, or I have a special devotion to her, whatever it might be. And I'd say, okay, well, her energy is here. And they would always say to me, really? She's here? Like, I have a devotion to her, but is she really here for me? Like, why would she come for me? And then when she came to me personally in 2012 and asked to be part of my work, I had that same question of, you want to work with me? Like, I'm not even Catholic. I really don't fit this mold. Like, why do you want to come work with me? And it's because I had that same issue of not really feeling worthy, not really feeling as if I deserved it. And it's one of the very first lessons that Mother Mary taught me, is that deserving has nothing to do with miracles. I really, really, really want you to hear that. Deserving has nothing to do with miracles. Why is that? Because God's love is unconditional. It's the miracle of unconditional love. So unconditional means no conditions. So there can't be people that deserve it and people that don't deserve it, because deserving is not part of the equation. So then what is part of the equation? Receptivity and willingness. So one of the things that Mother Mary said to me when I would like, well, she asked me, I was like, are you sure, Mother Mary? And really what was true was that I was in a place in my life, I was going through this really challenging period, this dark night of the soul. And I was so open and so receptive because nothing else was really working in my life. I was literally on my knees praying and asking for help when I had this profound encounter with Mother Mary. And I think she was waiting for me and tapping me on the shoulder all that time. And I wasn't really open. I wasn't really receptive. And I definitely wasn't willing to let her work through me and to be a channel for that energy. No way. I was like, no, thanks. And so, of course, I kept that miracle that has transformed my life. I kept it at bay for, if I'm honest, about 15 years. How sad is that? For about 15 years, I could have had a miracle in my life. And so instead of feeling bad about that, I'm just really grateful that I finally said yes. And now I get to have miracles in my life every day. And so do you. So Mother Mary wanted me to share a few stories to just illustrate this point to you, that deserving is not part of the equation. And I want you to think about this for yourself, because this is something that we all do. There's probably something that you would love to experience. Who doesn't want to have a miracle? Who isn't ready for a miracle? It could be a financial miracle. It could be a health miracle. It could be a relationship miracle, career. It could be anything. It could be with your children, with your parents. Any area of your life could be an area that you would love to have a miracle. But you want to take a look and ask yourself, am I putting conditions on that miracle? Am I putting conditions on myself? Am I telling myself that I'm not ready? Am I telling myself that I haven't eaten the right foods, or I don't know the right people, or I haven't prayed enough, or I don't meditate enough, or I'm just not good enough. I haven't done enough good things, or I'm not a good whatever it might be. These are conditions that you're putting on your miracle. These are conditions that you're telling the universe you need to have. So then the universe is like, oh, she needs us to wait. Okay. She's telling us that she's not ready. I was telling the universe for so long, and I can still do this, because once you get started down this road of telling the universe that you're not ready, it becomes a habit. And then that is dangerous, because the next thing you know, 10 years go by and you're still telling yourself, I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready. So I'm really sharing my story with you so that you don't wait 15 years for your miracle, because it's already here. Remember, I say this in every episode. The key to magnifying your miracles is to remember that your miracle is already here. You just need to become open and receptive to it. So I'm going to share a story with you. I'm going to read something from the book of John. So for those who were raised in a Catholic or Christian background, you'll probably recognize the story. And if you weren't raised in that background, just listen to this story. It's a powerful story. And I love to use stories from Jesus, because I was raised in that tradition. And these are the stories that are just burned into my mind. I know them so well. But two, because he's such an amazing healer. And these stories illustrate the point of how to magnify your miracles over and over and over again. So this is why I come back to these stories. So the first story I'm going to read to you, let me pull it up here on my screen, is from the book of John, chapter 5, verses 1. Well, I'm not going to read verses 1. Let me go down here, 1 through 18. This is the healing at the pool. And so see if you can hear the truth of what we're saying here, that miracles are not about deserving. So this is a story about Jesus going up to near Jerusalem. There's a place it's called the Sheep Gate, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda. And it was surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. And here in this pool, a great number of disabled and sick people used to lie, people who are blind or lame or paralyzed. And there's a gentleman there who had been there for 38 years. He was the way that they're translating it is an invalid, for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" And here's what the gentleman said. "Sir," he replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred, and while I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me, and I never get in." So the background story of this pool was that once in a while, an angel would come down and stir the water. And when the people would see that the water was stirred, the first one to jump in would get the blessing. So this poor guy, see how he's answering the question, which I love this story. Jesus asked him straight on, "Do you want to get well?" And what does he do? He tells him all the reasons why it's not possible. Now, we've heard this before, right? I shared this in a different podcast episode of when an archangel, says that your prayers are answered, don't argue. This is the same principle here. It's like when Jesus asks you if you want to get well, please say, "Yes, I want to get well." But this gentleman says, "Oh, I have no one to help me in the pool when the water is stirred. I'm trying to get in, and someone always goes down ahead of me. And I've been laying here this whole time." And Jesus says to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk. And at once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and he walked. Now, I love this story. I love this story for many, many reasons. One is, who can't relate to this guy who's been lying by the side of the pool for 38 years, hoping somebody else would do something for him, right? And I want you to think about this for yourself, because as I shared, for 15 years, I kept telling Mother Mary, no thanks, this miracle is not for me. And I don't want that to happen to you. So whatever it is that you're telling yourself right now, whatever, Jesus or whatever you believe in, God, angels, Mother Mary is saying to you, do you want to get well? Let's translate that. Do you want your miracle? Do you want it? Is that something that is of interest to you? Your miracle is already here. I'm simply asking, are you open to receive your miracle? And so some of these conditions, think about the conditions that you might be saying. Now, I see this a lot of times with people who are in the New Age community. Well, it's my Saturn return, or Mars is not in the right house, or, something. We have an excuse like, oh, well, I'm going to wait until the springtime to do this or do that. We keep saying later, I'm not ready. There's some external condition that is greater than me, that is greater than the power that is within me. And Jesus has said to us, there is nothing that is greater than that which is within you. The power that is within you is greater than any circumstance that is outside of you. And I really want you to hear that today. There is something inside of you that is greater than any of your circumstances. And this is something that I'm learning every day, not to let my circumstances dictate to me what is and isn't possible. This is a really important lesson. And it's one that I think once you're on the spiritual path for a while, this is a tough one to really grasp, because you mean I'm the master of my circumstances? Absolutely. If you let that energy that is inside of you be the dominant energy and not your circumstances. That's why Jesus, who could see clearly that the man had something inside of him that was greater than his circumstances, and notice that Jesus didn't touch him. He didn't push him into the pool. He didn't take a little bit of the water and sprinkle it over his head. He didn't give him any herbs. He didn't rub his feet. Any of the things that we think we have to do. Now, believe me, I love all of those things. I love all the alternative healing modalities. I love them. But if you study the miracles of Jesus, you will see most of the time, I think there's one time where he takes a little bit of mud and spits on it and puts it on somebody's eye. The rest of the time, he heals with his words. Isn't that powerful? He says to people, get up and walk. Your sins have been forgiven. And then it happens. It's amazing. So that's one example where the man thought he had to meet these certain conditions in order to get his miracle. And Jesus is like, nope, pick up your mat and walk. Another one that I really like to share, which I think is such a beautiful illustration, again, from the life of Jesus. This is from the book of Luke. And towards the end of Jesus's life, we get down to the part of the crucifixion. And so here he is. He's gone through all these trials, all this terrible things that were happening to him. And Jesus is up on this cross, and he's got one person on one side and one person on the other. And these are convicted criminals that are there with him. And here he is being crucified, and he wasn't guilty of anything. One of them makes fun of him. One of them says, if you're so great, why don't you save yourself? But another one, the other one on the other side, asks him and says, please remember me when you come into your kingdom. Remember me. He asks. And of course, Jesus says, truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. He's telling him, when you cross over, which you obviously will because you're on this cross here with me, you're gonna meet me on the other side. Now, here's somebody who clearly wasn't deserving. He was a convicted criminal. He was being crucified for a crime. Who knows what that crime was? And he even knew it. He's like, yeah, I deserve to be up here. He doesn't deserve to be up here, but I deserve to be up here. But what did he do? He opened himself and was receptive. He just said, he asked, please remember me. And Jesus is like, of course I'll remember you because you're asking me, because you're asking me. So again, another example. And this is part of the reason why Jesus's ministry was so radical at that time, because you have to remember the context of the time period. God bless everybody in the Old Testament, and especially Moses, who brought the laws of the universe into practical application, because really that's what that time period, they didn't remember. They didn't understand how the laws work. They didn't get it. And so Moses was like, okay, let me show you how this works. Let's look at the law and all of that. And then what started happening is people started to forget that there were also these higher laws. And so again, believing in conditionality, that we have to obey these laws or God's going to be mad. And Jesus came to say, it's not about the rules. It's not about the rules. It's about the spirit. It's about receptivity. When you love God, you automatically follow the rules. When you love God and you love other people, you don't have to worry about, did I do this or did I do that? It happens automatically. Well, that was a radical teaching at that time, and people couldn't deal with it. It's like, what do you mean there's not a hierarchy? What do you mean you don't have to do all these things and make these sacrifices and do it? It was radical at that time to say that God's love was unconditional. And that's his message. And that's the message of Mother Mary. And it is the number one rule of miracles, to magnify your miracles. It's unconditional. The magnifying effect of unconditional love, that is the most miraculous thing of all. So the final thing I'm going to read to you to really get this kind of in your heart and in your mind today. In the book of John, the book of John is one of my favorites. John and Luke are my two favorites. But John is the really mystical book in the New Testament, because John was Jesus's most advanced male disciple, and he really got it. He really understood him, which is why when you read it, it's so mystical. So the very first chapter of John, he's trying to explain the Christ energy and how it manifested through this person of Jesus. How did that happen? And so he'll say, in the beginning was the Word and all of that. And you're like, what does it mean? Because it's so mystical. But when we get down to this 12th verse in the first chapter, he says, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. And name means consciousness. It's what that means. It means his energy and his consciousness. As many as received him. And that's a really important energy that Mother Mary wanted me to share. It's about receiving. It's not about worthiness. It's about openness. And there is an energy of humility, because you have to be humble to be open. You have to be willing to be vulnerable to receive that. So anything that you're thinking right now, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, it's a rule that you've constructed, and the universe will respect your rules. And it'll say, okay, she thinks that she has to finish her college degree before she can get that promotion. Okay, let's help her have that experience. Or she thinks she's got to lose weight before she's going to find that perfect partner. Okay, let's make that the reality for her or for him. What if you drop the rules? What if you dropped the rules? What if you let yourself go for what you really, really, truly desire? What if you let yourself pray about your deep heart's desire and you're actually open to it? What if you let yourself be free to receive your miracle, and you let go of the idea that deserving has anything to do with it? It never has, and it never will. Why? Because God's love is unconditional. Has to be. Now, that doesn't mean go out and do horrible things and be a horrible person. It doesn't mean that. It means that your miracle's here right now. All you have to do is be open and say yes. When Jesus says to you, do you want to be well? Say yes. You know, when Mother Mary says to you, would you like these blessings? Say yes. When the Holy Spirit comes and visits you, open the door and say yes. So practice saying yes and letting go of the idea that deserving has anything to do with it. All right, my miraculous friend, such a great joy to share this message with you today. And remember, if you did enjoy it, I would love it. I would so appreciate it. First of all, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode. What do you think about it? And what are you willing to let go of? What rules are you willing to let go of so that you can free up your energy and receive your miracle sooner than later, so you don't have to wait one more day for you to magnify your miracle? I'd love to hear that. You can always leave me a comment on my website, on the podcast page. You can always email me, francis@francisfayden.com. I'd love to hear about it. And please feel free to let your friends know if you enjoyed this episode and leave a review if you haven't done one already on iTunes. I really appreciate it. All right, my miraculous friend, remember, the key to magnifying your miracles is to remember that your miracle is already here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.